Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Zero to Infinity. I'm August Thompson, one of the boys here. We're kicking it on, what is it, Tuesday night? Tuesday night, just kind of hanging out and...
Podcast number 2.
Say what's up to Mark.
What's up? Busy week. A lot going on. We're starting out with the... What did we call it again? The free forum?
We call it open forum.
Open forum.
Yeah.
Dialogue. And then we'll jump into the book. Last week we did it the other way, but
Yeah.
fuck it. No rules.
Just feel like
We just make it up as we go.
No rules. Yeah, sometimes you gotta make exceptions to the rules. Trevor over here got some good stories. I'm dying to hear.
I haven't seen these guys
he's
in
been a couple weeks. He's been traveling. He's been going
long.
places, going on some adventures. So we're all dying to hear some of those adventure stories.
Oh, they're interesting. I always say life is what you make it, man. Had an opportunity to go to Indianapolis this weekend. It was pretty fucking cool. And it was for this thing called Prime. It was a leadership council or conference for presidents of IFCs, interfraternity councils. And it was pretty interesting. It was the first time ever doing it. They threw us in kind of like a small hotel. No one was around us, and we really couldn't go anywhere. Like the city was like 20 minutes away.
So you couldn't go out and party afterwards.
And it's fucking 8 degrees. And so like a lot of these guys flew in, so it's like who has a car? No one. Who's paying the lift? I'm not going. And I mean, I got a group on Saturday night to go out. We went out, got fucking hammered. Like it's pretty fucking cool. One of the interesting things there that
In the city?
Yeah, like in the city of Chicago. Or not Chicago, Indianapolis, downtown.
Yeah.
They had this bar called Brothers. Me and a couple guys. Bunch of pikes there too, by the way, which was pretty cool. We took like a ski shot, and then you got to keep the cup. Like it was fucking tight, like at the bar, you know. So it was pretty cool.
Oh wow! How many people were on that ski shot? Was it 4?
4, yeah. It was bad. It was badass. But it's so like 8 degrees, dude. Never. I've never experienced anything like that. Like dude,
8 degrees?
That was like
That was
Fahrenheit. 8 degrees Fahrenheit.
You're walking from
That
bar
was
to
your
bar.
bottom?
You're walking from bar to bar. You're frozen. Like you're like.
Well, what are you wearing though? Are you just wearing?
You're wearing a sweatshirt, a coat. I put on leggings, pants, and I was still frozen.
What kind of shoes were you wearing?
Vans.
That's
You
probably one of the
think
reasons.
that much
What,
of a
did you just
Yeah.
have regular socks on, or did you have wool socks?
Oh, basic socks.
Regular socks.
socks.
If you have wool socks, it would be way warmer.
Yeah.
100%.
Probably.
And if you had better footwear, it'd be a lot better for you.
All right.
Yeah.
Word to the wise. Change your
But because
footwear. and-
one year we went to
Your
Snow
wardrobe.
Globe and it was -8, and that was fucking cold. But it wasn't like unbearable where it's like if it goes any colder, I'll still be like decent, you know.
Uh-huh.
I'm not gonna die.
Interesting.
But it was like cold enough when you're trying to drink water before it comes out of the little hole at the top. It would just freeze around the rim before it even get to your mouth.
Oh my god.
That's when I knew it was cold.
That's unbelievable. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know they did shit like that.
All right. Anyways, back to
But
Indianapolis.
yeah, so it's like I don't know. It was the first time ever doing it. You could tell like a lot of people. It was their first time in these roles. Pretty much everyone was getting hired on spot. But it was so cool. It was like 85 of us. They brought in a keynote speaker on the first night, and this dude's name was Dipper. I wish I knew his last name.
So it was Dr. Dipper at this point?
Dr. Dipper. He taught like high school government, and then went on to get his doctorate. And he teaches like classes on leadership. And this guy blew my mind. You go to a lot of these conferences, and usually you get a guy talking about like leadership, like what he's came through, like he climbed out of something. But this guy just kind of like, instead of telling like his story and like trying to inspire you like that, wanted you to tell your own story. And he threw up like proverbs and stories from like ancient lines of like Indians, like the good wolf and the bad wolf. People have heard about that one, right? That's what everyone you feed more, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was pulling all this stuff, and he had us turn around and start talking to each other, like and sharing like real stories and trying to figure out how you operate in certain scenarios, why you operate like this, what's the true meaning of why you're doing this, and kind of just dive into yourself and pick up everything. I mean, he had us.
That sounds pretty deep to get like a whole
Holy
audience
shit,
to
dude.
go in
He had some guys
that deep, you know.
He had some guys like figuring shit out about like their families that like fucked them up in the. Like,
This sounds like some Tony Robbins shit.
Kind of, yeah. It was pretty similar. It was pretty similar to what I imagined Tony Robbins would be like.
Have you seen his documentary on
No,
Netflix?
but I've heard. I got a really good friend that's like he's been to one of his shows.
You should watch that and
I
then
kinda
tell
wanna
me
go to his
if
show.
it's like the dude that.
We should just go to his show. I want to go to his
They're
show.
like thousands of dollars.
It's like
though.
over $1,000
I
for
can
a
get a
ticket,
ticket for
so
$500.
that's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
I don't know. I kind of am down to try it out, dude.
I think it'd still be beneficial
so
though if you
curious.
do.
Yeah, you should watch the documentary first.
and then decide if you still want to go after that. Then
I've heard like a little bit about him.
But I would love to just like have you watch the documentary and then tell me how he relates or how he's like the dude you had in Indianapolis.
Okay, I'll definitely check it out. But yeah, dude, I don't know, it was so cool. And he had my favorite part, the best message that he sent, at least to me, was, I mean, he's like a big time history buff, right? Loves history. And he went to England and went to check out the Parliament. And so the Parliament that they display like on the Olympics when it was there and stuff is like the new one. It's all fancy and redone. Everything's the chrysanthemum columns and shit. But he wants to see the original. So he goes to the original and he tells me, or he tells us, it's a room no bigger than this apartment, I don't know, 20 by 20. And he said it's just wood slab, man. Like there's nothing there. There's like he said he was amazed that the Western world was built in such like a shitty little place. And he kind of like walked around and shit. And then he said that he came across like a plaque. And this plaque, the only thing that was written there was, "Here Sir Thomas More was sentenced to death." And he was like, why is this guy here? Like of all the things here, there's this plaque. And he didn't know much about Sir Thomas More, and so he looked him up and started doing a bunch of research. And he found out that Sir Thomas More served King Henry VIII. And he served King Henry VIII as if he was...
Not sure why that's
Why-
funny.
yeah,
Why is serving King Henry VIII?
I'm just saying, this is where he was collapsing last time in the story.
Now you're gonna make him collapse again.
Oh, man.
Just for reference on that.
Shooting darts. Shooting darts.
Here
All right,
comes
let's
the
get
bus
out there.
trap.
I appreciate it. Let's bypass. Anyway, he was like the Speaker of the House, like the head of the Senate, the VP to the President, like the ambassador, all in one for King Henry VIII. So this guy was just a superstar, like of his time. And he was very religious in the Catholic faith. And so, being like the king, for talking about King Henry, your main goal is to have a male heir and carry on your line, and then your reign rules on forever. That whole dynasty thing. And so he couldn't have a male heir. Like his wife just wouldn't get pregnant. At the time, they always blamed the woman. Everyone says it might have been just him. And so he wanted to divorce his wife, and he goes to Sir Thomas More and says, "I need to divorce my wife. I need to marry someone else and have a male heir." Sir Thomas More, being attached to the church, said, "No, I can't do that. You were married in front of the church. Like that's the law. If I do that, I'm going against my faith, and we're breaking the church." So King Henry VIII sentenced him to death. He's like, "I want to behead you." And so, but he waited a little bit, and he put Sir Thomas More in the Tower of Terror in Britain. And he was there, I don't know, for a couple months. During the time, King Henry VIII separated from the church, created his own church, and then went back to Sir Thomas More and said, "Hey," or actually he told his daughter, so this is King Henry VIII telling his daughter, he says, "Hey, I will release your father if he pardons me from the church. Tell him to not worry. All I need is to get my pardon. I broke off from the church, so it doesn't matter anyway, and you can go live your life in like in the plains and shit.
In the countryside?
Yeah, in the countryside, and just enjoy life. I'm not going to behead you. I just need that pardon." And so he sent Sir Thomas More's daughter to the Tower of Terror to tell him this. So imagine your daughter is telling you, like, "Dad, you can get out of jail free if you just pardon him, and you can come live with us, and that'll be the rest of our life, and you'll be fine." And Sir Thomas More, let me see, actually, I'm going to pull it out. I wrote it down. It was so good I had to write it down, dude. I couldn't, like, it blew my mind. Hold on.
This story goes deep.
Sir Thomas More says, "When a man takes an oath, he's holding his own life in his own hands like water. And should he open his fingers just a little bit, then he may not need look for himself ever again." So imagine... Do I have water in here? Fuck. Give me some water. Do you mind if I spill some water on your floor?
Go ahead. You already spilled food last time, water this time. Can't wait to see what's next time.
Just a little bit of water. Fuck, it's gonna be tough to do.
It's going to
You
turn
really
into
do
wine
Holy
for
could
us.
do this.
Don't worry.
Let me do it.
It's the next coming of Christ. He's turning it into wine for us.
Yeah. Let me pour it for you. Let's go.
Listeners are going to love this part.
Yeah, this is kind of weird. So I grabbed a bowl of water. So check it out, dude. So basically, have like a little bit of water. I'll just do it over this. If I part my hands just a little bit, so if I take an oath, it is as if man is like holding water. And if I part my hand just a little bit, then I need not look for myself ever again. Basically saying, that's how tight you have to grasp your integrity and whatever defines you, and live by it. And if you move just a little bit, it slips and you're gone.
If your integrity and your moral compass is skewed, then
If you go against it, if you choose to openly,
if you go against what you know is true and right,
yes,
or go against your own word, is that better? Going against your own word.
Yeah, that's another way to look at it.
Yeah.
It was just so intriguing, man. It was like,
So if you make a promise, live up to that promise,
yeah, that
no matter what.
that too. It was just everything. It was like,
So that was the best part of the
that was the best part, because it was like,
whole
no
speech.
matter what your options are, you have to stand by you. And if you say something, do it. And if you believe in something, believe in it. Why are you gonna go halfway?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of what I took out of that. It was so, I don't know, it totally set me off my rocker. Wow, actually, maybe that's why I've been feeling so odd lately.
Have you been thinking about this a lot lately? It seems like you have been.
Wow, that was a cool digress. Yeah, totally. I've been feeling fucking wild lately.
So how has that changed your actions or your feelings or your behavior?
I don't know. Everything looks a little different.
In a good way or a bad way?
And like it needs to get a better way.
What do you mean?
Are you able to more clearly see?
You want more? You want it to get better? You want it?
Like I believe in more. Interesting. That blew my mind. Wow. That was pretty cool.
You had that light bulb moment.
That was wild. Yeah. But anyway, so it was like really good. Look at this man's face.
Just smiling.
He's cheesing.
Right, he's
just
like
smiling.
Cruising. Yeah, dude, I don't know. It was just, he was so wild. But that was
So
like
what
the
else
best
did
part.
you do?
So I did that.
What else did you do?
Something else, okay, now this is more something I want to hear you guys talk about. That was me telling a story. So I got a ride to the airport by this Ukrainian dude. And he was telling me that Ukraine is literally in war and complete socialism.
It's a crazy time right now for Ukraine, for sure.
I didn't
And it's
realize
no
this.
wonder why.
But I don't know. I haven't heard anything about this. No one talks about it.
Well, it used to be a lot more prominent in the news.
Yeah.
And then, like, other things have been taking place of that.
Oh,
so-
true.
And it doesn't seem like it's just Ukraine. It seems like it's all the way up to the Baltic states as well.
Really?
Yeah.
You talking about socialism?
Well, Russia's influence on these states, and basically Putin trying to get back the Soviet Union and diverging these other surrounding states into chaos. So then my guess is he can go in and influence and have power there.
Really?
Because it's been well documented that he really wants to get back the Soviet Union. He thinks it's a huge mistake. They broke apart, and he wants to get that back, essentially.
I definitely, like, am intrigued about, like, this topic, because it has been, like one of the bigger, like, just news stories of the years, you know, of the year, like, of 2017. Like, it's definitely up there. But I definitely don't know enough about the topic to, like, talk about it a bunch.
And it seems like it's sort of funny, or at least comical in a way, is that the big news story is that it's not being told on the news as much as it should. And international news isn't picking this up, and it's not as prevalent as it probably should be,
Yeah,
because
that's what I was
they're
thinking.
still in a pit of chaos here, and they're still fighting and scrapping back and forth here. And there's a lot of retaliation back and forth, and no one's really paying attention.
Well, we're sitting over here, like, especially, like, the far liberal, like, California area, like, our big problem is, like, pronouns, you know? Or, like, if you're triggering someone, like, that's the news we're listening to compared to, like, you know, worldly news where it actually, like, is affecting people's lives.
Oh my God.
Is way different, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So our attention is diverted on less important stuff, and I think
Because it seems important, because it's, like, right in front of us. It's like, oh, it's here in California, you know?
So you think the news is just another form of entertainment?
Well, it is entertaining.
Well,
It has to be entertaining
it
to
has
some
to be
degree because
entertaining.
they have
That's what it
to.
is.
They have to sell. They have to sell stories. You know, they have to stay in business because they have to pay
No, I know.
to have the lights on, just like any other business. You know, so at some point they're in the business of making money, and so it's not in the business of complete like journalism and complete like storytelling of actual stories that are the most meaningful that are happening around the world currently.
And that's why the alternative media is on the rise, the YouTubes and everything else, because that's a way to get truth around the main media. And now some of our citizens are gaining a more truthful aspect from an alternative source rather than Fox News or mainstream media. And that's like the first time basically in our history we're able to do that, because we didn't have YouTube or anything before that, and we just had a mainstream media, mainstream radio. And so now it's really diverging, and now we have a huge set of media sources now that we never had
Like
before.
infinite amounts.
And now our job is to synthesize all that information to find what is true. Because what you find is if you go to Fox Media and you go to CNN, the stuff that matches up and they're saying that is the same is probably the truth. Everything else that they're diverging on probably isn't the truth. It's probably just political rhetoric. So that's how you determine. Or that's one way to determine the truth with all these media outlets. What is
but that takes a lot
overlapping,
of like
what's-
time. And,
It
like,
is time consuming.
How'd you come up with it?
analyzing and stuff like that.
That's just how you do. That's how you synthesize. That's like the proper way to do it. And there's actually people who out there. Their whole job is just to synthesize. That's all they do. They just go around.
So does someone have
all
a
this
news?
information?
Does someone have a news outlet that is synthesized? That is.
Like my favorite one, and I think is the best, is like Vice,
We talked about that last time. Yeah, I remember. You brought
because
that up.
like they don't do like the day-to-day journalism. They do like actual in the field, like people there asking people journalism, where it's going to take you weeks, months to produce like one thing. You know, one article or something.
Yeah.
Or one like video or whatever. It just takes a lot more time to do that, so you're not going to see them on the daily news.
Does it take them a week to put out a story, or do they put out stories daily?
Like a week.
Vice News? I don't really know.
See, that's the key there, because the
Like
Economist
at
does the
least a
same
week.
thing. The Economist will take
A lot of their stuff
to
takes
develop
like
a story.
like way longer. Like you'll
The
be talking.
Economist is good. I like The Economist.
Well, because they put stories and they work on stories for a week, and then they put it out, or longer than a week, and then so now what they're saying is important enough to be regarded within a week's time span, or even more than that. So it's not every day. You're not just picking and choosing just some random little thing to talk about. You're talking about something that's very important.
You're thinking
and
way
you're
more
thinking
big
about
picture.
it for a week, and if something's long enough
Yeah,
to
I
think
get what
about
you're
for a
saying.
week, it is far more important than what is to think about it within the hour, like on Twitter. So
like that.
those are the medias like you can really look forward to, and that's just one
But you can
more
even
layer
like
of trust you can add to them.
yeah. I bet there's somebody out there that does it even like bigger than that. You know, like they do a month's worth,
Yeah,
or like they do like 6 months or a year's worth. And imagine like the level
a year's
of,
worth is like too late.
of detail
That's
and
the truth.
depth
They
that
do though.
It's
You're right.
it's not too late because they just put out the 100 best things that happened in 2017. Michael Shermer was talking about this,
like
and
people like pay attention to that.
And then
People
so
look at that.
there was like at least 50 things, or there's a large majority of things on there that Michael Shermer hasn't heard about in 2017 that was all positive good news, and he stumbled over this article and it had all these positive news that just wasn't in the media, wasn't talked about. So 2017 may have felt like our worst year, but in fact it could be very well that it was our best year ever.
I think we're just in such a weird time.
What got talked about? I'm curious. This is such a.
There's 100
Odd
things on the
tangent.
list, and I'm sure if you just type that into Google, you'll find
Let's
that.
type it in. I'm so
Go ahead and
curious.
find it. But he was talking about that on Dave Rubin's show, and see a little bit another Dave Rubin show, and like
What's it called?
He's on YouTube. The Rubin Report, but you can just Google 100 best things in 2017. You may be able to find it. So even like Michael Shermer,
Reader's Digest.
I don't know. Check it out. See how it goes.
Who's it by? Do you know?
I don't know who the
15 best things that happened in 2017.
no. This was 100. This was a long
I
list.
think you're looking at a different list.
A plus.
It seems more like an opinion. Could be right though. I don't know, but he'll talk about it on the Dave Rubin if you really want to go look at it and find that source.
Okay. Let's go back to where Trevor was at, though, with the Ukraine thing. So what did your driver tell you about Ukraine?
Dude, he said it was, like, horrible. He said it was unbelievable. He was a doctor, okay?
He was a doctor?
He was a doctor.
Now he's a driver in the U.S.?
He's been in America for a matter of, like, 6 months, if that.
Oh, wow.
So this dude's fresh, like...
Yes, that's one way to put it.
That was so seductive and, like, creepy.
Fresh.
You gotta
No,
be
dude,
fresh.
just like, he just...
Fresh meat. Okay, Trev, settle down.
Well, I'm talking like fresh off the boat. Like, that shit was so funny. Oh my gosh. Dude, because he had, like, I feel so bad. He had, like, his accent, like, was pretty heavy. To where certain things, like, I had no idea what he was saying.
So why was Ukraine so bad?
This dude's a doctor making, like, he said, I think it was $80 a week.
Mm-hmm.
Or a month.
But what's that equivalent to?
And, like, rent's, like, $70.
So
And he's a
doctors
doctor.
make nothing.
He said that's how pretty much everyone's wages there.
Damn. So
Did he... So
Socialism.
it was due to socialism that everyone's wages would go down. Yeah, because the only way to have it is everyone's equal and flat, but everyone's broke and poor, and that's no better. That's not an improvement from the capitalistic system at all. That's only downgraded.
You bring everyone down.
Where does that money come from, man? Like,
And look at that. That's just one more example. Then you have Venezuela. Same thing. Everyone's starving. They're all migrating from Venezuela to go God knows where because they're all trying to find food for their kids.
Yes.
And so it's just another classic type of socialism that you can just look at and say this was a catastrophic failure.
Socialism never works.
Yeah, throughout the ages and throughout different cultures, and that's how you know that set of ideals is not a good one to hold.
Because not everybody works the same. There's no incentive to work harder.
yeah, true.
Because if I produce 8,000 potatoes, but you produce 8 potatoes, we're still getting paid the same amount.
Let's go.
So
Yeah, you're
That's why
August is
that's
waking
why I
up
like
at 12 p.m.
socialism.
Mark's out here grinding at 6 a.m. getting these
day.
potatoes.
That sounds like my place to be, man. Oh, dude, I just get a kick back and then I'm like, oh.
You can get back and you have one sliver of potato per day, and that's your food.
Fuck.
So it won't be that fun, actually.
Can't get big, man.
can't get big. No big Trev over there.
No.
Yeah.
No list.
Their gains are very minimal over there right now.
Yeah, dude, he was telling me all about it. It was just like wild. I don't know. One thing he said that was kind of curious to me. I don't know what you guys think about this. He was saying how, like, he talked about getting a loan. And, like, for me, like, dude, fuck. I would not want to get a loan, like, at all. If I could avoid it, I would avoid it at all costs.
Well, if that institution's still there a year later to collect that loan.
Okay.
Are you talking about in Ukraine?
No, we're talking about in here in the U.S.
Oh, okay. I was talking about Ukraine, I was about to say.
No. And he was saying, like, wow, that's interesting. It's like a lot of Americans, like, are afraid of taking out a loan. What do you guys think about that? Isn't that interesting?
To some degree.
Because a lot of people are risk adverse instead of, like, risk advert. What's the word?
Advent?
I don't know, whatever it is. It's like you're for risk. You're more
Pro risk.
You're
Sure,
more
pro risk.
likely to like take a risk.
Okay.
So
yeah.
it's like if I tell you, like, if I can throw this ball through this hoop, I'll bet you $1 that you can't do it. But if you win, you get $2.
Okay, I'll take $2.
If you win, though.
Can we shoot something real quick? I'll do this for you right now.
But like some people will take that bet, some people won't, because the risk of losing $1 is worth more to them than gaining $2.
And your point there was coming from Ukraine, that system instilled these values where they're more pro risk.
You're going deep with it, but
Wow.
Well, that's what I took away from your point there.
I guess that could be said of my point. Yeah.
Well, it was because his original question was, why are Americans so risk adverse? And then you said, well, maybe it could be this. And
No, he just said, why do you think Americans are afraid to take out a loan? And I think it's because a lot of more people are risk adverse versus pro risk.
Yeah, and the driver said that people in America are more risk adverse. That means there's something here in America that makes it more risk adverse rather than some other place. That other place I was assuming would be Ukraine.
Is that a question?
No, that was me breaking down that conversation and why I thought.
No, I was following you.
Yeah.
But
does that not make sense though?
It makes sense.
That's what it seemed like to me. So, but I don't know why
you were going in a roundabout way. You were hard to follow.
I was trying to tie all the details so we will all have the same storyline and why we followed that progression down there.
It was a long rabbit hole. I think some of us got lost on that rabbit hole.
It was. But to say why they're more risk adverse than somewhere else,
I don't know. It got me thinking, like, if you actually took out
why
a
do
loan,
you think?
If you just think, I started thinking about this.
Because I wouldn't want to do it either. Just
right, like, would you do it?
how do you go?
Well, it depends. A loan
how
much
like,
and for what?
Let's go a loan for like $25,000, just like straight cash.
So that sounds like it's like what, like a student loan maybe?
Sure.
When I take a student loan out of $25,000.
Well, that's different because you're saying you're
That's dedicated
getting
to
something out for an education. So
what am I
you're
buying
getting it out for a
house?
person.
I'm saying like a
Or
straight loan, like you're just getting $25,000.
So you want to start a business?
Not even. I started talking to this guy about getting like a pilot's license. He was like, "Why don't you just take out a loan to go pay for the pilot license class?" So pretty much you would need just straight cash.
But pilots don't make a lot, so they're paying it back.
holy shit, dude! Pilots make so much.
Not really.
Maybe there's a
Oh
wide
my
spectrum
gosh.
and maybe a private.
They're in high demand for like.
I know one of my
Southwest.
buddies is a pilot.
Yeah. Is he not working?
He's working. He works a lot. But the problem is when you're a pilot, you only get paid for flight hours. No pilot gets paid for any time you're sitting in the terminal, any time you're just like sitting at the gate. None of that. Pilots only get paid for actual flight time, the amount of time you're in the air with the plane.
Really? That's one of my buddies.
Crazy.
My buddy's dad.
So if
I
you're,
don't know, is he like, who's he fly with?
he flies with a smaller commercial airline.
Okay.
It's not like a major one because you have to work your way up there.
Yeah.
And he's been only a pilot for like 5 years, so it takes a while for you to like work up the ranks. But he's like at the company before you get to the big like Southwest, JetBlue, like big airlines.
Yeah.
The legit big airlines. So he's like at those commercial airplanes right before there. But anyways, divergent from that. But like he's telling me that even those guys don't make that much. Because I thought too that like pilots, they probably make a fuck ton because it's a pilot, dude. You're flying a plane.
Maybe a popular mainstream airline would pay them a decent amount.
But he said that's like a common misconception. Like you'll get paid well, you'll have a good salary, but it's not like you're making
over 100.
You're not making like anywhere close to $1 million a year. You know, it's not like you're a baller.
Who thought they were making $1 million a year? Everyone would be pilots then.
Yes. I think
I fly planes to make $1 million a year.
Well, I thought like the very high end
money.
ones. Like say you've been with the company for like 40 years and you're flying for it. I feel like then you'd be balling, making like $750K a year. Like,
yeah, that'd be really nice.
You know,
or if you fly around like
but
a
like
LA movie actor.
But they'll
you're
make
his
like
pilot.
they'll make like low 100s.
Imagine being Dan Bilzerian's pilot.
Well, yeah, private pilots. If you work for like that or The Rock or something,
Yeah, where are we
like,
going?
you're making hella money.
Just gonna go like to eat or some shit.
Yeah,
That'd be crazy.
but anyways, so they don't make like a fuck ton.
So maybe that Ukrainian guy had a bad sense of loans. Maybe loans
And
are
it
different.
takes a long time to work your
he
way
thought it
up.
was
more out
great.
here than here, though.
He thought it was great.
How was his English?
I told you. It was hard to understand, man. He
Really?
was saying salary. He said like salary or something. And I thought he was saying celery. And I was like, what are you looking at?
Nothing. So the Ukrainian guy may have just had a bad sense of what loans are in the U.S.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know, man. Where are we going?
But it takes a while for you to build up to being like a legit pilot, where you're going to be making over 100K.
Yeah, I know. You have to log so many hours. Like Southwest
Yeah.
pilots, it demands a certain amount of hours.
Yeah, it's a lot of hours.
It's like servitude, and then you're a king. I don't know. According to my buddy's dad, he said he picks whatever flights he wants. Barely works and makes like a shitload.
How old is he?
Like probably 40s.
So he probably has a lot of seniority in the company.
Something.
Who does he work for?
I don't know. I gotta find out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know.
Did that Ukrainian guy say anything
'Cause if you have-
else about the U.S.?
Oh, the reason why I brought
I'd love to hear.
the reason why I brought up the English was because you have to speak English to be a pilot, and it's like no matter where you fly in the world, you have to speak English because
Really?
English is the international flying language. So literally, you go anywhere, Dubai, Africa, wherever, if they're flying internationally, they have to like speak English.
Wow. So remember this guy was a doctor, right, in Ukraine. So he comes here and he's driving like Lyft. That's a huge shift. And he was telling me about how hard the exams are if you're coming in from like another country to get qualified as a doctor. He said they're the hardest in the world.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
Oh, it made me have so much pride. I felt so good to be an American. I was like, that's fucking awesome. We have the best healthcare. That's sweet. He said it's impossible. He said it's so hard. He said you gotta study for like 6 months to a year.
Mm-hmm.
And then take it.
Well, you hope so because you're making all these life-changing decisions. So
It's hard, man.
it's good, and that shows you that other countries just don't have the capacity to do that, and
Probably.
and that's why their health care is probably so poor.
I don't know. It's just he said it's just because it's highly valued here. The occupation is.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're gonna make a lot more here than over there.
Because we're way more developed and we have that capital that
You know,
other
I
countries
realize-
don't have.
I didn't realize how many lawyers there are. There's so many lawyers.
Yeah, there's a lot.
There's a lot.
Like, there's so many lawyers.
Well, because there's so many jobs for lawyers.
It's ridiculous.
Lawyers can do almost anything they want, really.
And every
You can
company
do
needs
law
a
in
lawyer.
any field.
A lot of them.
A lot of individual people have their own lawyers.
It's insane, dude.
Yeah.
God, I wish I found law interesting.
I find it interesting to a degree, but not enough to like become a lawyer.
Yeah, it's different when you're reading all those court cases or those contracts and you have to go find that one thing that's that huge contract, and like doing that takes a lot of time and effort and really narrow in focus, and like a lot of people don't have that.
And it can mean all the world's difference, like
Oh,
the
what
way you
about-
phrase something,
Oh, that's
the way the law's written, the way you interpret it, the way you're able to like convince the judge, or like you have the better case. Like, even though you can still end up being the wrong person, but the other lawyer didn't know the correct like arguments to make against your case for him to win. But he could have won, but this guy was better at it. And he knew just a bit more than the guy sitting across the hall from him.
I think
That
that's
sounds kind of fun.
Yeah, it's like a game. It's cat and mouse.
It
That's
is.
why
Holy shit.
That's why people get so like delved into it, and some people really love it. You know.
Wow, that sounds like a really.
I think
fun
that's
game
why
to play.
guys like it too, because they're always constantly competing like that, and they're competing at the firm who has the most billable hours and who makes the most money, and so these lawyers are just constantly competing. It's like if you're constantly playing football, but it's like football within your mind, and so you're competing against everyone else, and it's
just-
you versus everyone else, and like
It's just
can
a
you
tournament,
win?
and like the top dogs eat each other. They
Yeah.
get to the top, and the higher you get up, the more prestige it is, the more intense it gets. Like the more you're into it, it's
like a
crazy.
high. You're just
It's a cycle.
Yeah, if
chasing a
you're a
high.
competitive person, you would love being a lawyer.
You're chasing a high.
You got to be like a type A personality, most likely. Like there's definitely some type B lawyers, but type A is way more prominent.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah, that's why the FBI and CIA love lawyers, because they know the laws, and now they can go be an agent and have that law knowledge in their background, so they know exactly what they can do and what they can't do, and what the agency can get screwed for and what they can't get screwed for.
How do you know this?
You got to talk to people.
That's how the lawyers are.
Yeah, you got to.
Lawyers become CIA agents?
Yeah, they love
happens.
having CIA. It boosts you way up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and plus
like
like
CIA
well, FBI.
Hey man, you want to try out? Or like how does it work? Like,
Well, because it works out perfectly. Because an FBI agent, to be a special agent, I think you have to be 23 or older, and so that's when you're like getting out of law school, and then you jump right into FBI, becoming an agent,
I get
and then
Or
you
like
just run
you
into
could
that.
even go back to school and become a lawyer and then continue to work for the FBI
Yeah.
or anything, because FBI hires like everybody under the moon. You know.
If you have a credible talent and you're useful, the FBI will hire you.
Would you do it?
I don't think I could pass their lie detector test. Like,
You have to pass a lie detector test?
Yeah, you got to do everything. To
Well,
become
you have
to
a
be in
massive
the FBI.
background check, but
Yeah.
they already know probably most of the things they know about you. They probably already have that down. They just need to go in and like do those hardcore tests, and they have to have a psychologist come in and test Mark, and they have to just go through a polygraph and other.
And since like
far
I've
more
smoked
tests
weed,
than that.
I would have to like convey that before.
You think they'd X you?
What?
You think they'd X you?
Yeah, probably.
Really?
Unless you had
Unless I had a
major
legit.
talent or information they
And
needed.
think about it though. It's legal in California now.
But it's not legal federally.
Yeah,
the
not
Federal
we-
Bureau of
It's all based off
Investigation.
federal rules.
Oh, come
As you're a federal agency,
They have to
you're part of the
operate
executive
by
branch.
those rules. They have to operate by those rules. So unless you had like an external
Think about
circumstance
how realistic
where
that sounds,
like
though.
this is why you smoked weed, or it was, or you have a really good story to like back it up, and you haven't like done it in a long time, then they might like consider you. But
Think about how ridiculous that sounds.
it sounds crazy in 2017, but they operate in their own world.
But like, just that blows my mind. It's like your entire life. It's like almost like knowing. Actually, no, I don't know. You think they judge that and determine what kind of person you are?
Yeah.
Wow, just off of one question like that.
Well,
Yeah,
they have
because-
to determine what kind of person you are.
Yeah.
No,
You're
no,
working for the
I'm
FBI.
curious as to how they're using that.
And think about it, the guy that's hiring me. He's probably older, probably has different views than we do, and he's been in the FBI for however many years he has been. So he's been influenced by that, and federally, it's illegal. So
Jeez.
it's definitely frowned upon and not acceptable in their culture. Just like it's not okay in the military. Like, ask anyone in the military, and like they don't want to be associated with it. They don't want like people around them doing it. Just because they can't do it, they can get like in a lot of trouble. They can get discharged for it. Like, it's just a different world they operate in.
You know, it used to not be that way. They used to do so many drugs. My buddy's dad, he was in the Navy, and he said they would like travel like he sailed the whole world, and he was saying that they would do like so many. They'd go everywhere and just try like whatever they had. They were in Africa doing I think opium, and just like doing crazy shit. They would just sack the town pretty much, hang out, take all the women, go back on the boat. He said it was the best time.
God, I hope he got out of there with an STD.
Yeah.
An STD, that'd be a miracle if he does that.
I don't know. He has 2 kids.
So
They
then,
look okay.
so then, are you saying then
It's changed.
he was before the point where they started testing and restricting these drugs?
I guess. I don't know. It was a looser time, I think.
Yeah. Times are definitely different, and times are definitely changing.
Yeah, I always think about the
But-
Stanford psychology experiment.
That's the current world we live in.
But it blows my mind. Like I just think about what happened at that time and how nothing happened to those people. Like they ended up okay.
I'm not entirely sure what you're talking about.
The Stanford prison experiment.
I saw like a Netflix thing on it, but I didn't watch it.
But they didn't go to like to prison after.
No idea.
The guys who participated in it, the people who
Went
did
to an actual prison afterwards.
they didn't.
Do you know what he's talking about?
Yeah, they didn't because they're part of an experiment.
But it was still insane. Like,
Because they signed a waiver, and so like I think that negates everything.
dude, it went way too far though.
What happened?
See, then
Explain the story to me,
Light
guys.
exam.
Come on.
so there's this
Just leave
Stanford
me in the dark.
experiment that's obviously famous that has been talked about and is revolutionary in psychology, and it's by like I believe his name was Philip Zimbardo, who was the professor at the time who was running this experiment, and he took they were all males, which is interesting because all male prison. I guess that makes sense. So he took half of them, made them guards, took the other half, made them prisoners, and
Okay, I've heard Jordan Peterson talk about this a couple times.
yeah, I'm sure he's mentioned it. I mean, if you're in psychology, you've probably heard about this. And
I
then-
don't know though. So keep going.
Okay, so then half are prisoners, half are guards, and he does this randomly, of course,
Mm-hmm.
to improve the validity. And so he turns this part of school, I don't know which part it was, but into a prison, and he breaks down the walls, or he doesn't break down the walls. He breaks down the doors and makes them into actual prison bars and stuff like that. So it actually looks like a prison. They have a holding cell, which is like solitary confinement. So basically, it's mimicking a prison. Yeah. And he made this into the one part of their school, and then so he has them go act as if they were actually in a prison, in a real prison. And so those guards they would be told to keep the prisoners in line at all costs, right? As you would in a prison, an actual prison. And so when those prisoners acted out or had some smart aleck remark and was giving them lip, the prison guards were able to beat them or throw them in the cell or basically abuse their power to do whatever it takes to calm them down and make sure the order was instilled.
Damn.
And this was run maybe for like 6 days.
Well, that was shorter.
Could have been 6 or 3 days, but it only mattered days. It was supposed to go 2 weeks, I believe.
So what happened?
And he had to cut it halfway through because then the guards started influencing each other and telling them, like, use whatever power necessary. And so the bad apples made the good apples worse, basically, as the prison guards. So the guys who were trying to hold a moral line got influenced by the guys who weren't holding that moral line. And then they basically abused the prisoners, and they got so serious, and they were going way too far and, like, abusing them, like cruelty, stuff like that.
Like beating them?
Yeah, and the prisoners thought they'd been in there for weeks.
Yeah.
Because they had no access to sunlight. So they thought they were there for weeks. They were like, holy shit, dude, we're not getting out of here. They had like, how long have we been in here?
That's like the ultimate Black Mirror episode.
Yeah,
right there.
and there's mental psyche.
Millions of dollars right there.
Yeah, the mental psyche was totally as if they were an actual prison.
Not a slow build up because I think
for a long time.
It's a slow show. It's a slow show.
It slows because it slowly crescendos into an ultimate climax, and then you're wowed at the end. But let's go back to the prison experiment.
Yeah,
but it's too slow. Yes, prison experiment.
Okay, so and that was the other thing is they were all acted as if it was a real prison, and it was hard for them to distinguish it was a fake prison and they were a fake prisoner, and they'll ever get out of this prison.
Were the prison guards allowed to like go outside and do other things?
Yeah, everything. They had shifts. They had a cafeteria area for them. Like it was non-distinguishable basically, and they did the best they could. Because it's a lab experiment, so you can only get so good in a lab experiment from doing it in the real world.
But so they like went home and slept and then came back and stuff?
Yeah, they had shifts, everything. Yep, wow. Just like that.
That's crazy.
That was your job for the summer. I'm a prisoner at a camp over for the school.
Yeah.
That'd be a fun job.
Another big thing was...
Trevor's the bad apple.
Yeah, Trevor's the bad apple who influences other good apples and rots them.
No, it was really interesting.
It was interesting to see how they were all joking. It was all fun and games in the beginning, and at the end, it was dead serious. They're about to murder each other.
Literally, it looked like they were murdering each other.
So it's a good like.
So no one died though.
No one died. And the post interviews were pretty interesting too. What they had to say in their post interviews and how they felt, and they thought like this guy.
Did any of the prisoners have like PTSD afterwards?
I think that's why they stopped it because it was getting to that point. Where I think some people did have maybe some mental damages after that.
Because if you're getting beaten and stuff, some people would just like completely break, I feel like.
Yeah, and so that's obviously why they had to stop because it was getting to that level.
Yeah.
Or is it about to get to that level at least?
That's crazy.
But it was so cool to look at the psychology of how they gave them all uniforms. Like distinctly all the guys who were the prisoners.
And they just started acting as if they were the prison guards and they embodied that right away. Or pretty fast.
Yes.
What it showed was the adaptation of human beings to their environment and what is expected of them.
Yeah, and their roles. They do it like that. Just boom.
Damn.
You accept what you're supposed to be. Boom. Alright.
And there's been nothing ever since that's similar to that?
It may not be moral. It may not get through an IRB.
It would never.
They may not be able to do
it.
it.
Prison.
Yeah. You're getting probably big trouble if you try to do something like that.
At least in the United States.
It probably would have been as big as like the OJ case, dude. Like if that kind of a case would have been as big as OJ. Everyone would have been talking about it. Like what these guys did what to what.
That's fascinating though.
Isn't it?
When was it again?
I don't know, 50s? 60s? Am I way off?
I have no clue. Maybe something like that.
I don't know. Anyway, but it's so interesting, right? So, talking about like accepting your role, and like how humans do that.
And the social pressures that go behind those roles. And that's what Orwell talked about in Shooting an Elephant, which was phenomenal because he had, instead of having the oppressor point of view, he had the oppressed point of view and their limited powers for the oppressors. So the people who colonize people, they're not free to do anything they want. Their scope of action is limited just as if you're the country being colonized. Because they expect certain things from you and they'll allow certain things from you.
Can you start at the beginning? Because
it's beautiful.
You started like halfway through.
So
I was talking about the metaphysical.
2 people in the village. He like set out with his rifle and was like going to do it, and everyone around him was like was hyping him up, like a huge following, a huge crowd was coming around him all the time. Right, Madonna? Right? I haven't read in a while.
Yeah, you're right.
Obviously not.
You're right. You haven't.
You're on point with your story.
You're right. You haven't read it in a while. So he starts out by painting a picture of English like colonizer because Orwell was English, and so
he knows way more.
He was a colonizer, and this is in Burma, and he was like basically the sheriff of the town. That's how I kind of got it from the story. And so, but he would go play soccer with the Burmese, and like the ref would see him get fouled, wouldn't call anything because he's white and he's English and he's a colonizer, and he would just get pummeled in these soccer games. Yeah. Everything was unfair for him. People would hate on him, do little cheap shots like that, and they would do that throughout his life. And like when he goes to stores and walking around town, they all hated him. Mm-hmm. But he was needed in a moment when an elephant was in this heated rage, going throughout the town, like stampeding, running over everything. He killed this person who was like face down in the mud, and so then he had to get his gun and he had to go find this elephant. And then after that elephant's rage has calmed down, but all the destruction was there, people were pissed off and they wanted him to kill the elephant. And so he finds the elephant when his rage is down, and he's just calmly eating something now. So you can infer what you want from that. Maybe he was just hungry or something, and so he's looking for food. But so now he's calmed down, he's peaceful, he's not hurting anyone, and he can just go back into his cage or wherever he came from. We can just capture him. But everyone was pressuring him to shoot the elephant, this innocent elephant at this point. And so he didn't want to. His moral capacity or his moral compass decided he shouldn't shoot the elephant and be the wrong thing to do, and he can easily just fix this. But everyone wanted him to shoot the elephant, and so he had to shoot it like 5 times, and every time it took like a part away from his soul. That's how I read it. So every time he's loading the gun, shooting it, he knew this is the wrong thing, but everyone was expecting him to do it, and he didn't want to do it, so he was forced to do something he didn't want to do. Mm-hmm. That was like the moral of the story. Is like even though like the social pressure is going against you and you know it's wrong, sometimes you'll just do it anyways, just to appease the people around you so they don't get pissed off or something.
People definitely do that. It definitely happens.
So he was writing about the social dynamics in this, and that was a huge like psychology thing that he was touching on, and that was during his time. That was a really good observation. So that's why that short story really stands out.
I don't know, man. I don't know if writers, some writers may think like that. I don't think a lot of them do. Because that sounds like you're writing I don't know. Writers are so curious because everyone has their own style and their own inspiration. Like Toni Morrison talks about like literally, it's almost like they're schizophrenic. She talks about like voices that go on in her head with her characters and they consume her. And she has to let them out. She just feels like a passive and has to write about it. And she says like her characters will like take over stories where she has to like cut them off. And then someone else will come into play.
That's pretty common for writers and very artistic people. It's not they're coming up with it, they're letting the ideas and stuff pass through them, and then they're transcribing whatever is happening in their head, but they're feeling as if they're not coming up with it on their own. They see something and they're able to channel that onto something.
It's interesting, right? I think the channeling thing is what blows my mind, because it's like, I don't know. I always imagine if you took someone who's schizophrenic and you had them like imagine their characters, what would happen? I don't know. I'm so curious of like.
That's an experiment.
That would be interesting, I think, you know?
I think it would be.
Because, like, really...
It also sounds dangerous.
It does sound dangerous. A lot of it's dangerous. I don't know. There's those mindsets like that. That creativity. I was listening to a talk with Kendrick Lamar and Rick Rubin. It's an interview. If you guys haven't seen it, you need to watch this
I
video.
heard Rick Rubin was an absolute monster. He's such a great producer.
I'm like just learning about Rick Rubin.
Who's Rick Rubin?
But I think he's regarded as the best producer ever.
He's
Maybe I'm wrong
unbelievable.
there, but he's up there.
He's produced I think he produced Mana. Holy shit, who am I saying? He produced the Beastie Boys. He started with the Beastie Boys. He's produced Jay-Z, Madonna, Aerosmith, like hundreds of bands. But and the story goes that he played in some band and they like fired him because he had no musical talent, and they wanted to produce all these people. Like he's the most well known producer, and he literally, I think he lives in a trailer. The interview I saw, it looked like he was like standing in like a little trailer.
Whoa,
His
really?
beard's like down to like his like belly button. His hair's like down his mid back. He wears no shoes, a white shirt, big gut, and just like cut off shorts, and just sitting there talking to Kendrick Lamar, hanging out
Really?
on like a gorgeous lawn. But he lives in this trailer. The guy just loves music. I think it's just his purest passion is music.
Wow.
That's all he knows, and he like people love to be produced with him. And he was talking to Kendrick Lamar. And it was amazing. This is the first time I've ever seen an interview with Kendrick, and he was just phenomenal, man. The guy talks about being an artist, and just like, if you want to talk about an artist, you gotta talk about Kendrick Lamar. He says when he walks through Compton, he says he's walking around, and say he'll see something like a little kid, I don't know, is reaching for like his mom's candy or something, or his mom's hand, and he'll take that inspiration, and he says he puts it inside of him for a little bit, and then he'll go and he'll write it down. And he remembers it. And then he takes that feeling and he just lets it rest inside of him and feel it and grow with it. And he takes notes on it all the time as he carries this around with him. And then when he's ready, he just goes. Writes it all down, expresses it all at once. But he lets it vest inside of him, grow, and then once it's grown enough, he channels it and gives it to us. It's just in my mind, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And he just seems like he's on this constant quest just to experience more, feel more, get deeper, find the root of it, find the marrow. I love that saying.
That's an interesting way to go about it.
That's what all the great artists do. They're on that cusp of chaos, and they're translating it into order, basically, for us.
Beautiful.
And so they're always on the edge of things, and that's where art is, and that's what art does, is able to produce and translate something that is almost untranslatable.
Mm-hmm.
So you put that into painting, you put that into a song, you put that into something. Sculpture. But like Rick Rubin said, when you have writer's block or a creative block, just write one word, break it down to its smallest chunk, let the sentence flow, then it'll all come together, and the rest is easier to follow. So what he's saying in there is if you have a writer's block, just write down one word, and then you build off that one word into a phrase. You build that phrase into a sentence, put that sentence into a verse, and you go from there. And so even if you have writer's block, which is Steve Preston's War of Art saying something, if you have that creative block, you just have to push through that, and you have to push up against it. And that's what Rick Rubin is describing. And Rick Rubin found that out way before Steve Preston wrote that in his book.
So you think he's saying that people look at it and turn and run?
Yeah, they could paralyze them, or they can go the other way and they just won't attempt it, and they just leave it there forever.
Interesting.
It's like reverse engineering something.
It is, yeah.
That's fascinating.
It is fascinating.
Which is funny, you should do that same thing for acting.
That seems to be a common trend.
It's an interesting vantage point.
Even with Gary Vee, he talks about reverse engineering things
Describe this a little more for me.
all the time. Reverse engineering?
Yes.
Reverse engineering is you trying to figure out something by starting at your endpoint and working backwards. So starting at Z, working to A, instead of starting at A, trying to get to Z.
Okay, so give me an example.
So an example
That's how I learn best.
would be... What's a good example?
C and I'm going to A.
You want to create the best burrito joint ever, better than Chipotle, you start with, well, what would that look like? What is better than Chipotle?
Uh-huh.
You have that end in mind, and then you work how to get there. How do I build that? Then you go back, how do I get customers? How do I get my food? What's the quality of my food?
Rather than starting at...
And there's different depths you can reverse engineer. You can
do
do it
buying
very...
the beans and buying the shit.
Yeah, you can do it very broad, the end product, or a better place than Chipotle. it could be very broad like that, or it can be like super in depth, like what exactly would make it better than Chipotle, and then you could list A through Z.
Okay, so I have an entirely
And then there could be
contrasting
an
opinion.
A through Z on top of the A through Z.
I gotta
Just
really
to
go.
make sure, so to add on to that, another good example would be how Elon Musk made SpaceX. So he wants to go up into space, and
He wants to colonize Mars.
colonize Mars and make private space travel. And so,
His ultimate goal is to colonize Mars. The man wants to die on Mars.
Dude's
Okay,
crazy.
so-
He's awesome.
yeah, that's one of his many goals.
Many
it's-
goals.
So he wants to die on Mars, and he
Very
wants to go to space. And the reverse engineering of that would be is going back to Aristotle's first principle is, well, if you need to go to Mars, then you need a spaceship. And then everyone's thinking like, well, how do I get a spaceship? I guess I have to get NASA to fly up there and use one of their spaceships. But then Elon Musk went back to Aristotle's first principle and it's like, well, I need a spaceship. Instead of renting one from NASA, I can build one for cheaper and it'll be better. Most people would just only focus on trying to get one from NASA, but if you go back to the first principle,
Because
I just need a spaceship,
because
I will
it's
build one
easier.
instead, and it'll be more cost efficient for me.
Because it's easier. Like, that's the way easier road to go to NASA. I
So
want the
basically-
spaceship.
But everyone would go to
And
NASA.
paying for a spaceship versus
Basically.
you starting from scratch, and you can, with today's technology, make a better version of the spaceship.
So is the
You can design it.
string across basically you need to do it yourself, start it yourself, rather than outsourcing, rather than looking for someone else to give
Well,
it to you.
you're not always doing it yourself. Sometimes you're working
You
for
can still
principles that have been
outsource
worked for
things,
thousands of years, but you're just defining. You're always, if you have a hurdle, you're defining the best way to get over that hurdle, and that may be creating your own or going with someone else's.
But the ultimate, I guess,
So you're
the ultimate is
deciphering
you have to
going-
have the end in sight. So
you always start with the end in sight.
You
chasing
always
this
start
end.
with the end, and you work your way back to the point where you are now.
So this would be you'd be similar to like a 5-year plan, like developing a 5-year plan.
Well, what would you want your
Define-
life to
guess.
look like in 5 years? I want a house. Well, how do I get a house? What are the steps to do that? And you work your way back.
Very interesting. So can I share a different story?
Yeah, what's your contrasting opinion?
It's
though?
so contrasting. I don't know. I haven't really decided on it, but it's just this one blew me for a loop. I was watching like a TED Talk by this guy of the name Magnus Walker. What a cool name, man!
I know who
You know this
Magnus
guy?
Walker is. He's been on
That's
Joe
a-
Rogan's podcast.
How was he on Joe? I haven't seen him on Joe. I saw him on TED Talk.
He's just like a weird dude.
Oh, he's
He's a
amazing.
British fashion designer and car collector.
Do you want to hear this? Do
He's
you know
like
his story?
super in depth on like
Everything.
some things.
He's pretty wild, bro.
So what's
He
his
is
story?
wild.
So his story. Do you know his story?
You
No.
tell it.
So, what is he? He grew up in Britain. It's my second time talking about Britain. Funny.
Yeah.
He grew up in Britain, and he dropped out of high school at like 15. He was like, I just didn't want to do high school anymore. And he figured out he could drink, so he would drink like until he was like I think 16 or 17. Is the way the story goes. And then once he does that, he hops on. His mom tells him, "Hey, you got to get a job, and you should cut your hair." And he's like, "Well, I don't really want to cut my hair, but I think about getting a job." So he works some odd jobs, I think construction or something. Decided to go to school for like a year. There's a program to go teach underprivileged kids in Detroit. He applied. He said, by some miracle, I got it. Went to Detroit. Was in the summer camp for a little bit. Once the summer camp ended, he hopped on the bus, went to LA. When he was in LA, he said it was really crazy to be like in the train station 4 a.m. by yourself, and then at 6 a.m. I was getting woken up by a police officer saying, "Hey, you can't sleep here." He was at the park. You know, he said it was pretty wild. You know, so we went to the YMCA, stayed in the YMCA hotel, went to Hollywood Boulevard like the next couple of days, bought these like crocodile print pants. Walks back to the YMCA, shit, they're a little too tight. So he bought a sewing machine and he sewed them a little so that they fit him. And then he started walking around Hollywood Boulevard. He says that this is the time where like heavy metal and like that punk scene was like huge, right? And he walked into some store, and the guy who was at the store was the owner and was also part of a band. He saw the dude's pants and he was like, "Hey man, those are really cool pants. How much would you sell them for?" Magnus standing there, he's like, "Man, I never thought about selling them." He said, 25, the first number that came to his head. The guy says, "Cool, I'll take 8 of them." So Magnus goes back to where he bought them, buys like 8 more, stitches them up just right, and makes like, I don't know, 150, $200. He's like, "Man, this USA thing's easy." Like when he said that, I was like, "That was pretty funny, man. That's good." And so, literally, but he said off of that, all of a sudden I just started selling more clothes. And then he got to Venice Beach where he was selling more clothes. He was getting really popular. His clothing brand line was called Sinister. I think it was Sinister, actually. Check for me, please, Mike. And
your story's spot on, though.
Sweet. And so he makes this like this clothing brand, and he's on Venice Beach. He's like, I need like I need a house to do this. I need like a warehouse. Him and his wife start shopping around, and he sees this like kind of like bummed out place. It's kind of like in the middle of nowhere. All of his buddies and advisors not advisors, but everyone's telling him, hey man, you shouldn't go there. Like that's not a good area to go. But him and his wife, it just felt right. There's something about it just felt right. Like, so they bought it. They lived out of the top and operated their entire business on the bottom floor. Got huge. They were outfitting like really good bands, Madonna, like these like really big pop stars.
Cooper.
There you go.
Bruce Willis.
Name some more.
Alice Cooper, Bruce Willis. That's what I see right now. But his band or his clothing company was Sirius Clothing Company.
Sirius, there you go. Sirius, not Sinister.
Sirius Clothing Brand. That's what it was called.
And he's making a hit on the like fashion. The best part is he's like, I just wore what I always like to wear.
Yeah.
And everyone just wanted to wear my style, like our style. That was just our style.
Yeah.
That's just how we will dress, And so, after he did that, all of a sudden, someone came to them and was like, hey, can we shoot him like a movie here? He was like, all of a sudden I'm in the movie set industry, man. And so he's like, America's Next Top Model shot there. Like a couple different movies would come and hit him up and like come through like his place and shoot like at his house. It's crazy, right? So he's making a shitload of money off of this. He's making a shitload of money off of the Sirius clothing line. And the greatest part is, when he was 10 years old, he wrote a letter to Porsche. And he said, he loved Porsche, right? He said, when you were in Britain, there was like only 3 cars. He's like, mine was the Porsche. And he wrote a letter when he was 10 years old saying, hey, I want to come design for you. They wrote him a letter back saying, call us in 35 years. And so, he started getting kind of bored of this clothing thing, and the movie set thing was pretty fun. And he's like, I've always wanted to do Porsche. So he started buying Porsches and remodeling them, refurbishing them and making them beautiful. He did it so well that a couple of his buddies were like, they made a film about him. And it was just like kind of like a loan me, I owe you money. Like everyone's kind of taking loans and doing their own thing. Very low budget, and they make this film. And they released the trailer, and within the first hour it gets 50,000 views. Top Gear had picked it up and was like showing it everywhere. Everyone, like all of a sudden, there was a lot of hype about this movie for some odd reason. And one of the guys who like filmed it put in a bunch of film contests, and it won. It was huge. It was a hit. All of a sudden, Porsche's calling this guy saying, "Hey, do you want to come help us out? And like we'll take you, like bring you to Porsche." And he's like, "Well, why not?" They literally had him go through the entire process of designing like Porsche and like being in all their meetings. This guy's like in the top executive meetings, dreaded the fuck out to his back with a beard down to his fucking belt loop, telling these guys like his opinion on Porsche.
Yeah.
No education whatsoever. Okay. And he's doing this, and then all of a sudden he's saying like Bentley starts hitting him up, like all these like really luxurious brands, and they're saying he's like they thought I was like some focus group, and they were just coming to me asking my opinion on shit. He's like, it was.
What do you want to talk about?